Well, Tim Connolly's still gone, and Adam and I have more to break down about the president of basketball operations leaving, because there's no chance someone will offer me more money, and if they did, Locked On would probably match it because they understand that's pretty easy to do if it's valuable. That's actually not true, but I'm just trying to reiterate the point. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show, join in the conversation, listen to several people just say that everything is doomed and Jokic should leave for Dallas. But there are also really great commenters like Joshua Saris that's in, Joe Broussard is in, Zamora is in. We got so many good commenters. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Miroslav is hanging out. So how are you guys doing on Tuesday when we're recording this, the day after Tim Connolly has officially left the Denver Nuggets for the Minnesota Timberwolves? We will continue reaction today to that deal. First segment, we'll talk a little bit more about our, just after having slept on it, kind of gotten a little bit more info, day after reactions. Second segment, we're going to talk about where the Nuggets go from here, what the impacts are for various Nuggets players, the new front office, etc. Third segment, we're going to talk about the impacts on Michael Malone. I will tell you, it's interesting in that I don't know that every executive would spark this kind of reaction from the like a Locked On pod. I'm not sure. Like, there's a lot of them I think that would, right? There are notable names regardless of who it is, but I'm not sure that every single team, the president of basketball operations leaving, would spark this kind of conversation. Especially for it not leaving in any sort of like, a Gerson Roses type of deal, right? Where it's just like, oh, he got a better job offer, so he left, which is essentially like the story here. What do you kind of make of how much? I guess here's a question. There's been a lot of pushback on the idea that local media is making too big a deal of this, that it's not that big of a deal. And I tried to stress yesterday, look, the Nuggets are going to be fine short term. Like, you have Nikola Jokic, you have Jamal Murray, you have these guys under contract, you have a good roster, you have Nikola Jokic, you have Nikola Jokic, you have Nikola Jokic. Do you think that in general we're making, has there been any part of you, I guess, that's asked the question to yourself, Adam Mares, on Twitter, Adam_Mares, that we're making too much of a deal of this?
No question about it. I mean, no question about it, because these are the types of moves that you don't really know, which way they're going to go. It could be better. Like, Calvin Booth could be better in ways that are more important going forward, which I think some people speculate, more willing to make trades or this or that. I think that stuff gets overstated a little bit, but the truth is we don't know. And so we'll have to wait and see. The thing that I think is important to parse out is there's a difference between what was Tim Connolly going to do to this point, or what has he done to this point, however you want to like argue back and forth about that. There's a difference between that, the value of Tim Connolly. There's a difference between, was he worth whatever crazy offer that the Timberwolves have made, which is a separate conversation. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not our money, but is that? But then there's the third part, which to me is the most important, which I think is why there's such an emotional reaction. And that is how it went down. This did not go down because the Cronkies, or Stan Kroenke. I would just start saying Stan Kroenke. This did not go down because Stan Kroenke looked around and was like, how do we get rid of Tim Connolly? Like, he's not our guy. We need to move on. This went down that somebody else valued him more, and that he allowed himself and the organization to fall into a position where he could be poached. So to me, the more concerning part of all of this, and the reason why it feels so bad, is it just feels like incompetence from the organization. On top of them going like, well, he's not worth that, and we're ready to move on, and we feel we can do just as well, which they might be right about. It's just that it didn't happen by like some great plan. It happened to them.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it, right? I don't know that I would like it or respect it more or value it more better if he had been like, Tim Connolly's not the guy.
Because like, if they hired him this offseason or something, or if there was a contract negotiation, nobody else bidding, and they were just like, not our guy, we think we need to move on. Like, that's different. That's you doing something. This feels like, oh crap, that was today? We were supposed to give him an extension. Oh, that's right. Now somebody's here. Like, okay, well, no, cheap out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we missed the deadline. Okay. I'm going to compare it to a deal that wasn't worth tens of millions of dollars. I was at CBS, right? And making okay money, but felt very much that I was under what I thought I should be based off of where I had asked my like peers, people I thought was peers. I don't think they would think of me as such, but anyway, I asked them what they were making, and I was prepared to kind of talk about that. My contract expired it was October 31st is when my contract expired at CBS, and they just like didn't offer a new one. They just were like, yeah, we'll get to it.
Right.
Like pretty soon.
Yeah.
And like I've been like, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. And they're like, yeah, we'll talk about it or whatever.
It's my life. I'm trying to make some plans here. Trying to
and then
what school to put my kid into, like these kind of
and there was like no response. And then Action Network, Chad Millman called me and made me an incredible offer. And much in the same way, there was a counter offer made that literally was like honestly, it wasn't officially extended because someone told me at the company, I'm not going to offer you this because it's an insult to you.
Yeah.
And so, look, when I read the Athletic report that the offer, that the new offer before the equity stake was double what he's making now, I was just like, oh boy. The real part about this is just whether or not you think you have an idea of how NBA teams should be run.
Right.
If you're just like, I don't know on the business side, I don't know anything about it, then it's fair to just be like, how does this impact me? And the answer is very, very little. Like, this impacts, I think, the fans short term very, very little. In the future, it might impact you a great deal.
We just don't know.
Right now,
yeah, we don't know.
As of right now, I don't think it doesn't impact it that much. The incompetence question, I think, is interesting. It feels like not even incompetence, just like willful non-engagement.
Yeah.
Of just like the idea. This is what I think drives me the most nuts. The idea of whatever, we'll just get another guy. That's what really just like that bugs me.
Well, but here's the thing, Matt, because I've talked to some analytics people that have created models that believe that the best coach in the NBA is worth like 3 wins, and the worst one is worth like 2 or 3 negative wins or 2 or 3 extra losses. And like people like you and I would sit here and be like, that's crazy. Like Spoelstra, so good. Like if you put them on any team, they become more of a title contender. And there's a belief, at least in the like mathematical models, that say that is not the case. Now, the truth maybe is somewhere in the middle. Maybe it's more towards one side or the other. But I do think that that Stan Kroenke's MO has generally been that. And it's not just about coaches, but it's about front office. It's about G League. It's about training facility. It's about all this stuff that it's like, do those things matter? They matter a little bit, but not really. They don't really matter. And maybe he's right on that. I mean, look, the one thing you have to say, because we're going to sit here and complain about this for a million different reasons, but the Rams just won a Super Bowl. The Avs are almost halfway to a Stanley Cup, and the Nuggets were in the Western Conference Finals the last time they were healthy. The 3 main teams, and then, Rapids are there, Mammoth are there, whatever. Arsenal, I know, is different. But those 3 teams are all like have really grown and done like some really great things over the last 5-6 years. So this is a more nuanced and difficult thing to parse out, I think, than people want it to be.
I wonder. Well, I mean, look, it's fair. I part of this you do have to kind of like understand where they're coming from. They got to put all that money towards the new practice facility that doesn't exist. I'm not here for it. I'm sorry. I thought with the day I wanted to like do the emergency pod yesterday,
right,
and get all that out.
Emotional reaction.
I would have expunged it.
Yeah.
But I still have a lot of like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? Yeah. That's still where I am. The always helpful Jay asked in the comments, how does it impact the future? We need details. I think the concerns here are if you do not get a guy that is as good, if you do not luck into a Tim Connolly after losing Masai Ujiri, and you find someone that struggles with relationships that can't get guys in, like we'll talk about Calvin in the next segment, because you and I have a lot of confidence in Calvin, but the circumstances are what I think we have to look at. The other thing I will tell you, stability counts for a lot when you're meeting with various free agents, especially the types of free agents that Denver needs, right? They're not trying to pull in Kawhi Leonard. They're not trying to get Kevin Durant, right? Those guys call, obviously.
Right.
Happy to have a meeting. But they're trying to get like guys to help win a championship. Those guys are usually looking for stability and to be treated well because they're not going to get star treatment. So they want a front office that they can trust. Tim Connelly had built an organization that players did feel like they were going to get taken care of. That was for right or for wrong. That was the approach that they took. In part, I think because of the reaction that they got when they tried to shop just the team quality. People will say like, if it's a good team, free agents will come. Nope, that is not it.
Right.
That's not how that works. So to me, that's like an example of it. There's a million different ways of like the top-down organization, but it's a good transition to the next segment where we can talk about what this summer means, what this next season means for Calvin Booth as the new head of basketball operations for the Denver Nuggets. Our thoughts on what that's going to mean, all of that and more when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, look, president of basketball operations come and go, but you know what stays? Built Bar. That's right. Built Bar is always there for you. And we've got, I'm glad I can always get a laugh.
Well done.
I love brownies. Brownies are my favorite treat. This is in the copy. It's actually true. Brownies are my favorite actual sweet thing that I'm cutting out in 7 days when I turn 40. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies. That's not true. I cook them. You're in luck, though, because Built Bar's got a new creation that's better than ever. It's the brownie batter puff. Okay, so you got a protein-infused marshmallow that tastes like brownie batter covered in 100% chocolate. Come on now. Come on. What? It's the best of all worlds. You get the protein, you get all that, and it's just 140 calories. It's got 17 grams of protein, more than the usual Built Bar, and only 7 grams of sugar, and yet it tastes like brownie batter. I tell you, there's nothing that technology cannot accomplish. Make sure to check out all of the Built Bars. You can get the mix box, which has got a whole combination of them, of the puffs and the regular bars. It's also great. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Make your second listen the Locked On NBA Big Board. As you get ready for the NBA draft, you're going to want to check it out. It's got mock drafts and player rankings and, of course, all of those big boards. Check it out, the Locked On NBA Big Board, wherever you get podcasts. Okay, so a couple things. I do want to comment on this. Josh Kroenke is going to hold a presser tomorrow on Wednesday. And so we'll have reaction from that. I will make it down for that. We'll hear what Josh has to say. If you ever wonder, like, we talk about the Kroenkes, and then you were earlier like we should just say Stan, and it's accurate. Like, at this point in time, my understanding is that Josh has been less involved this year, and that things were pretty much left alone. With Tim gone, there's probably going to be a little bit more oversight. We'll see how that kind of shifts as they manage all of the teams that they own. Like the ones that they're willing to spend money on. And so I think it's important. That's not true. They're paying the luxury tax. I got to keep saying that. One person did ask me if there was anything that Josh could say that would like calm things. And I don't necessarily know that he needs to, because again, like the key personnel are still in place. But as a Nuggets fan, I'll ask you this. As a Nuggets fan, what do you want to hear from Josh Kroenke tomorrow?
Well, first of all, here's an interesting comment. Somebody says, odds Kroenke hand selects media available for questions during the presser tomorrow, minus 500. No, not true. I mean, say what you want. There was a chance that he didn't speak. In fact, I called the Nuggets on Sunday or Monday, whenever this was coming down. I'm like, so Josh is talking, right? He's not going to duck this one. I was like, yes, he's going to talk. He's going to do a presser. He's going to get, he wants to face the media on all of this stuff. And there's going to be questions about the Comcast deal. There's going to be all of this. So it's a little late. I wish he would have been up front for some of the Comcast stuff before, but tomorrow I think Josh is going to face the music. And one thing I will say is, everybody remembers one of the most memorable moments of the last decade in basketball was when the Warriors traded Monta Ellis for Steph to clear the way for Steph Curry, and Lacob goes out there and everybody boos him. Was it the Chris Mullins retirement jersey or something like that?
Yeah.
And everybody at Oracle boos this man for choosing Steph Curry. Turns out like that was the smartest thing ever. And Lacob was actually at the beginning of doing things very, very right in terms of building your organization and how to do it. And he still got booed. It could be the same. Like, time will tell us if Josh is doing things the right way here and this is the right move. Is there anything he could tell me that would like squash it? Not really. It's more about like, I just want to see his reasoning. You want it to be on record. You want to record it, and we'll evaluate it over time. Like, I hope that he states as much as his perspective, philosophy, plans, it answers all the questions that you have about practice facilities, about Comcast, about how they market the team, about what direction they're going, all those questions. And I don't think there's anything he says that can soothe you, but it's like, okay, noted, on record. We'll see how it plays out.
So with Calvin Booth and Tommy Balchettis taking over. And
do you have an answer for that, though? I mean, do you have an answer for that? I'm curious is there anything tomorrow you're specifically looking for him to say?
No, it's going to be, there will be talk of the equity stake. The line will be that we did everything we could. A lot of this is just, like, I appreciate that Josh is going to speak to the media. I think that's good. Candor, I think, is impossible in these scenarios.
So
I just don't think it's reasonable to expect, right? So that's the only thing that really interests me. I think doing the presser in and of itself is valuable, just to kind of be like, hey, there's somebody here. It's when nobody talks that I think that it's a bad sign, and they used to do that a little bit too. So I think just having Josh Kroenke speak with the media, I think is a really good step. I think probably the biggest thing that he should probably do for the fans is just to reiterate, like, look, no matter who's in charge, we're ownership and we're committed to winning a championship, and we intend on doing whatever it takes this summer to build the best team possible to win a championship. That to me is like if you just say like, hey, don't worry about the front office, we're going to try and win a championship. That's what fans want. That's what fans should want to hear, right? Like, they should care about that specifically, regardless of who gets it done for them. That should be what their priority should be. You agree?
Yeah, I just don't know how much we get from that. Like tomorrow, like somebody in there saying like, I want to hear that they are willing to compete, like that they're wanting to compete. Like, okay, we'll hear that tomorrow. We'll hear it tomorrow. He will come out and say like, we believe we can win a championship. We're going to do whatever it takes. Like, we're going to hear that.
Yeah, and I think it should be. I mean, that's the big thing. I'm hoping that he doesn't come into the. I think it's natural to come in and be defensive, and there's no point in doing the presser if you're going to be defensive.
Totally
like,
agree.
Set your agenda. Say what you're going to say. Like,
be confident what you're saying too. Yeah.
Look, we would have loved to keep Tim. It didn't work out. He got a great offer. We're happy for Tim. We're thankful for all his contributions. We have the utmost confidence in Calvin Booth and what he's going to be able to do as new head of basketball operations, which, look, there is a lot of idea. And I mentioned this yesterday. I've talked about this. To me, the biggest criticism you can have of Tim Connelly was not the things that the mistakes that he made. It was what he didn't do.
Yeah.
It was that he was always very cautious because, the whole skip steps thing, if you're careful not to skip steps, you're also going to be tentative to take steps forward.
Right.
And so he was, very typical, every time there was a situation with a trade, I always approached it with, I would not expect it to happen until it was like very late in the process, because I always like the message I always kind of got was, well, it's got to be the right deal for us, versus an initiative of, we need to address this. And I do think that's very likely that the new front office will probably the old front office that's the new front office will be a little bit more aggressive in those pursuits. Like, look, I'll just say it. Will Barton's not gonna be here. Like, to me, there's no chance that Will Barton, not no chance. There's a very low chance that Will Barton is on the roster next year, because his biggest advocate would have always been Tim Connelly. And even if Tim had reached a point of probably being like, it's probably best if we move him, there would have been a lot more things loaded around that in terms of his evaluation and all these types of things. GMs value their guys more than they value everyone else. And all of these guys were Tim's guys. And so there's probably going to be a little bit more aggressiveness there from that perspective.
Yeah. I think we should talk about that in the third segment, though, just some of the moves, because Will Barton's the obvious one. By the way, I think if Tim Connelly was around, I fully expected that. I mean, 3 weeks ago before this news broke, I fully expected Will Barton to be moved as well. I think that was a plan one way or the other. But I do think that you could say, like, if we rewound things 3 years, would Will Barton have, been re-signed and all of this or that? Maybe that would have been different. But going forward, I expect it. But there's some other things I expect as well. So we can talk about that more at length in the next one. Somebody says here, Adam, you seem to be a Josh guy. And then he says, do you think it'll be different once he actually takes over, for Stan? First of all, Stan's like not on his deathbed. So that's a question for 10, 15, 20 years from now. I don't know if that's super pertinent at the moment. But the thing about being a Josh guy, like, I don't know Josh very well. I know Tim, I know Calvin, I know Tommy, I know a lot of Mike Malone. I know these guys pretty well. I don't know Josh that well. I've only had a few interactions. The thing I'll say is, in our job, we are almost always analyzing these people professionally, not personally. I mean that sincerely. Like, we're trying, like, when I talk about a player, I'm not like, this is a bad guy, they need to get rid of him. I mean, otherwise we'll say that. We'll say, like, I don't know, man, like maybe there's an issue that he's causing with the team, but we're analyzing them professionally. And with Josh, what I would say is that when I talk about him, all of these things are just about professionally. Josh has been, in my few experiences with him, has been remarkably human, which I think for like the son of a billionaire, an heir to a $1 billion empire, is actually pretty rare. We see some crazy Bolins out there, for example. So I personally, like, I actually think Josh is a pretty good dude, all things considered, in my experience, and he's been very human. I'm analyzing them as a entity, as the ownership group of the Nuggets.
Josh Kroenke rented cats and dogs in the year 2000 from a movie store. You're trying to parse
weird detail to share. Okay.
That's my insight into Josh Kroenke. No, I'm with you. He's very personable. He's not. I'll say this: there are guys that you come across and you're like, "Oh, that guy's rich."
Right. I don't think he's an asshole. Like, I know a lot of people say this, like, "Oh, he's just this like mustache twirling evil person." I do not think that whatsoever. And by the way, his employees don't think that as well.
Must not say what's in head. The reason I mentioned this is actually Josh went to the University of Missouri at the same time I did. And so I actually worked at a movie store, and
there you go.
Josh rented movies. My funny anecdote that there is two guys in front of him in line were arguing about the basketball team, and they're like, they play Saturday. He's like, no, it's Sunday. I'm telling you. And the guy behind him says, no, it's Saturday. We play at 4. And he's like, how do you know? And he says, I'm on the team. And it's Josh. So that's my long-standing memory of Josh Kroenke from when I was 20 or 18. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. I want to talk about Malone. That's what I want to talk about. Let's do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, let's talk about Bet Online. Our partners Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. I was on the Celtics last night. That was an easy one. I had Jason Tatum over 38.5 points, rebounds, and assists. That was an easy one. Thought it was going to be a sweat because they were up by 30, and I didn't think he was going to play again, but they put him back in. He hits a 3. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, the Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. I'm taking the Bengals under 9.5 wins because I always fade the team that loses the Super Bowl. Bet-online is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet-online, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Really appreciate it. Make sure that your second listen, after making us your first listen, is Locked On NBA. I'm on Tuesday on today's show, breaking down what was quite honestly out of and horrible basketball game.
I love the like Locked On NBA crews. Like, every time there's a terrible game, it's like, ooh, who's on tomorrow? Ooh, Matt. Oof, poor guy.
Poor guy. Yeah, it was awful. It was an awful game to recap. But we talked about that. We talked about Warriors, Nuggets. Warriors, Mavs, and then we talked about the Tim Connelly situation on that as well. So make sure to check that out. Adam's on Friday, so check it out. Locked On NBA, wherever you get podcasts.
Real quick, I want to address this. Somebody says, I feel for local guys like yourself, you're in a bit of a bind when excessive criticism will be a problem. Not true. Erroneous. There's only one. Like, people say this all the time. You have to understand something. The only thing that would get them to like take a credential away from me would be false accusation, like slandering or something like this, where there's no, I'm just saying things, or if I'm spilling something that's not on record that I did not have like the ability to share. Yes. If I didn't have like, if this was like on background or something like that, those are things that would get me. But criticizing Malone or Conley or Calvin Booth or even Josh or Stan Kroenke, are you kidding me? Like, I've sat here and criticized those guys quite a bit, pretty harshly. In fact, even now talking about this, like, we're talking about again, I don't know that it's necessarily Josh. I think it's Stan. He's still the one that makes all the decisions. He's still the one that I think when things, he's still the one that ultimately has his fingerprints over
Yes.
everything. And like we've sat here and criticized him really, really harshly. I don't think that he is the best owner. There's nobody has ever once in my 8 years now covering this team commented on something that I have criticized somebody for.
In 2015, I wrote a column that said the Denver Nuggets are a train wreck. That was the headline, was the Denver Nuggets are a train wreck on CBS Sports. Nothing. Not any pushback. And when later it was brought up to me, it was, you weren't wrong. This has always been the thing.
We actually did a lot of that. I would say this. Most of the time when you have a harsh criticism of an individual, someone else would be like, hey man, I think you're right there. Like, yeah. Malone.
Now, not all organizations have been like this, but that's how the Nuggets have been.
Right.
Like there are organizations that will punish you. And look, you can definitely be on the good side or bad side. That can happen. I think, but yeah, I'll say this, like, as long as you're fair, and even if you're not, like, I don't know, let's say that you tweeted that you were more mentally tough than a player. Like, let's just throw that out there. If you were to do that,
Still
right? Like, if you were to question like a person, like mental toughness and integrity, then you still would keep your credential. So that's how that goes. I want to talk about Malone. There's a school of thought that's out there that, and I think that there are two ways this goes for Michael Malone. If you ask the question of, is this good or bad for Michael Malone? My answer would inherently be it's bad. You lose an ally. Like, you lose a very strong ally that no matter the disagreements between the two men, Conley's approach has always been to back the coach because he understands those dynamics. And the more you can do to put a coach into a position of confidence and security, the better their, I think, performance will be. Right. I think when you threaten people, whenever somebody's worried about their job, I think that they do a worse job of it. Like, I don't believe that somebody if you present somebody with an opportunity that focuses them and they can chase it, if you present them with a threat that causes nervousness, anxiety, and it heightens their weaknesses. And so I think we've kind of talked about this a lot, about how Malone has always been high stressed because of his experiences. And I think losing Conley will probably increase that to a degree. We already said after the season, I said next year is going to have to be it. Like, regardless of the outcome, like if you don't make a conference finals and put up a fight and get to yourself within like range of the finals, or make the finals or win the title, that there's gonna have to be a decision made on Malone. I said that after the season, right? And I think Malone was pretty much primed for that. The other thing I will say, though, is there is an alternative here to the idea of him being under more pressure, which is if they do succeed, there's also a power vacuum left by Tim that Calvin won't necessarily usurp all of.
Well, he might. I mean, we don't know that, but you're right that is probably more likely. There's always a power vacuum, and this is how it works. Like, leadership in an organization is split between the owner, the coach, the front office, the star players. Like, there's just, all of them own a little bit of real estate in terms of like how things get done. A player can lean on an organization, or a GM can lean on the coach. A coach can lean on the GM. All of this. So now, naturally, not that I think there's anything nefarious, but naturally there will be those tensions of like, okay, who gets to override who now when we get to the draft room, and Malone says he wants this guy and Calvin says he wants this guy and Josh or Stan says they want this guy. Like, where does that dynamic play? And I think that was, by the way, one of Tim Conley's skills. He's a very personable guy. This is one of the things he's great at. I think he's great at when things hit the wall, whenever there's a chaos, he's very good at making sure that things are handled without spinning out of control and there being these little fractions in the organization. And that's why when people talk about decision making or this pick or that pick, and we always say, like, guys, that's a big part of it, but it's not the whole part of it. To me, this is the things we're talking about. When there's a big, like, there's real tension in the organization right now, does it get smoothed out? Or do you get Mark Jackson getting the players to not communicate with anybody in the front office and boycotting them or making fun? Like, those are part of the things of the leadership of the president of basketball operations.
I'm thinking. I think
Can I take it in another direction though? If
Yeah.
you're thinking to one of the things one of the layers to this that I haven't seen discussed by anyone just yet is I believe we'll find out tomorrow perhaps, but I believe Calvin Booth is operating under a 1-year deal. That he had like a year left on his deal, and that now that he takes over, it's like, hey, you're the guy for now. And we'll
For
see.
now.
Yeah, we'll see how we get through the summer. We'll get through the year. We'll get through the trade deadline. We'll kind of see how you do. We'll see how the team does. And then after that, and here's what's hard about it. Unlike Tim Conley, who had already made millions of dollars and now is making lots of more millions of dollars, Calvin Booth has as a player, but I'm just saying as a GM, this is his chance. This is the first time he's in the driver's seat. So forget the money part of it. This is what he wants to do, and this is his first chance at it. There's a weird incentive. Your incentives get off a little bit. They become less aligned with the team when you have 1 year to prove yourself to get the real gig. And that's the one thing I would be a little bit not concerned about. But if you tell me like Calvin Booth has a 5-year deal and he goes into the summer and he has an offer to trade Bones Highland for something that's going to win now, but maybe leaves you vulnerable down the line. If you have a 5-year deal, you weigh the 5 years, you weigh the 1 year, you weigh all of this. If you're on a 1-year deal and it's like, we need to make a deep run this year in order for me to get re-upped. All of a sudden you might be like, you know what? Let's do it. Push the chips in. Like, what do I care? If we get fired, I'm gone. I think Calvin's going to handle this earnestly, but I'm just saying that is a natural shift in your incentives when you are trying to prove yourself.
Yeah, look, this is one of the biggest reasons why executives need to be on multi-year deals, because you have to be faced with the consequences of your it's not just that you have to be faced with the consequences of your actions, but you also need to keep it in mind of like, you need to incentivize them towards like, hey, you're a part of this. Like, our future is your future.
Right.
And you have to manage that as well. And I think that's like a really important thing to manage. Look, it's entirely possible that like they have a really good summer and everybody's really happy with it, and he gets an extension by like mid next year, right? Like, that's entirely possible.
Of course.
You know, they might announce it tomorrow. Maybe they're just like, we're just gonna go ahead and lock this in, so there's no question about it. But until that gets resolved, I do think it's worth considering. I think from a fan perspective, if you want the team to be super, super aggressive, if you're just like, put the best players around Jokic, I don't care what, then that's definitely that's probably something that you were going to be, that's going to appeal to you. Right. Like, they can get if they trade Bones, they can get a better player right now than Bones that can contribute right now more than Bones, no matter how many threes Bones hit. Like, that's just kind of how it goes. So that's part of the equation. I want to comment on this from the comment section. It will be good for the press to ask Josh, who is making the final decisions at KSE around Nugget spending. This is something that you and I know, so I just want to go ahead and share it. He will say he is, because Stan's not allowed to own an NBA team because Stan owns an NFL team.
Yeah, legally there's an answer to that one, right?
So I don't know what to talk about. Like, I've been to so many of these pressers, and that's always the kind of and we're all like, we always just kind of look at them like, really? Because we all know. And so, like, that's a reality. So don't expect all of those.
I've addressed this, I think, in every podcast I've done, but somebody here says Tim's a great guy, Malone's a great guy. They both made mistakes that have been covered basically by Jokic. First of all, this is true, but it's also true of everyone. Guys, Pat Riley gave Duncan Robinson $70 million 5 months ago. He doesn't even play for them. Like, he just sits on the bench, at the end of the bench, not getting into the games. Like, the greatest GMs have wins and losses. You still have to step back and look at it. And yes, him getting Jokic had some luck to it, although we can't just throw it out as lucky. Otherwise, like, why were they the ones that were lucky? They put the work in. The story of how they got Nikola Jokic was not just hey, let's throw a dart at the wall. Like, they had to work to get him and to convince him to come over and all these different things, and got him early. That was a great gamble that ended up paying off. But nonetheless, we could do this all the time. They found Monte Morris late in the draft. Like, you found good players in the middle of the draft. There's a lot of different things that have happened that have been good and bad. I hate the argument of it's just, it's just one deal and then everything else. Take away any GM's best move and then grade them on that.
It's also it's like coaching. There's 100,000 decisions, and the public judges them on 5, and it's just not how this stuff goes. And I don't know how to put that into perspective any more than we do every day. Like, that's what we try and do every day, is to show all the little ways that these decisions matter, good and bad.
Right.
Regardless of what it is. Like, the Tyler Lydon draft was an abject catastrophe.
Yeah.
And if they hadn't turned it around 4 days later by getting Millsap, and if you
Right.
don't understand how good like the impact Millsap had, like I can go back and pull you the numbers of what he gave them.
How about
So,
this, Matt? In the Tim Conley era, and let's really say the last like 7-8 years, where do you think the Nuggets rank on fewest conflicts? Like conflicts that can really turn things.
say that again. Put that
Like,
one more time.
have the Nuggets had more conflicts behind the scene, more turmoil, or less turmoil behind the scenes?
Oh, less. It's been zero drama.
It's been like zero. They might be number one in this. And again, this
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about. In that when everybody just looks at the moves or this or that, but this is a big part of it. Is like when things fray, do they spiral out of control the way they do so often? So often, like, and then people think like these things are oh well, so and so said this about the coach. Of course, it was going to spiral out of control. Not true. Part of a president's job when you're a culture setter is making sure that these conflicts don't become big ones that derail and compromise you. And the Nuggets have had zero of this. Now, some of this is they brought in good players, but guess what? That was also part of the plan. And a lot of this does have to do, and I just know this is a fact, a lot of this has to do with Tim Conley. When things start to sputter, this is his wheelhouse. How do I make sure this doesn't become a big deal? And there's, by the way, a lot of GMs who are the opposite. When a small little wedge gets going in there, it becomes a giant one because of their inability to handle these types of conflicts.
Jake's like, is it not unfair to say he's made mistakes though? We've like said it 100 times. He's made mistakes. Like, what do you guys want here? The idea, but he's not impossible to replace. He's not. But the idea that he's easy to replace is what we argue with.
Right. I'm
the
so
approach,
open to Calvin Booth doing a great job. Like I just want that to be clear.
Said it yesterday.
So
he's gonna be great.
No, like I'm open to the fact that he might be better than Tim. This is not like,
yeah,
people have to understand that. Like this is not the
It's about the process of how we got here.
Yep, exactly.
That's entirely it. I have one little last piece of news that is not related to any of this that I wanted to comment on. Guess who popped up on the Canadian FIBA qualifiers list?
I'm glad you saw that.
Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is on what?
It's a 3-year commitment, so it's not necessarily for this year. It's kind of like, my understanding of it is it's kind of like what USA Basketball does, which is like, hey, we're going to pull a big group of people, and then we'll pull each roster for each year from that group, that pool. But Jamal Murray,
what if he played?
It'd be crazy if that was his first games back, especially when you waited to come back from the season and this or that. I know it'll be several months. But actually, is there a tournament for Canadian basketball this year? I think there is. I think there is one. I think there's one almost every single year. They're just
they have a FIBA qualifier this year,
like a qualifier or something. I doubt he plays, but I do like that he's on the roster, and hopefully in years to come we do get to see him on the national team. I think it'd be cool. That's a good team, by the way.
Yeah. Have we considered the idea that Tim wanted to make the move? The assumption is the only reason Tim moved is because the Nuggets are cheap, and maybe he wanted a fresh start. No, I'm telling you that's not what it was. Like, go ahead and remove that one from the brain. That is not the case. Oh, I got another international thing for you.
Okay.
Bojan Bogdanovic is not going to play for Serbia.
Ooh, wait, Bogdan is Croatian, I think.
Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. I thought I had that right.
Oh man, they're going to come for you now.
I know they're going to come for me. I'm very sorry. Bogdanovic is not going to play for Serbia because of his injury. So, I guess that makes it more likely that Jokic plays. So,
we'll see.
Okay. You got anything else?
That's it for today.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of Locked On Nuggets.